Hello everyone, and welcome to the Williamson County Sports Connection. I'm Jack Daniels, your host, and today's show is a little bit different. We have a different setup here, and we're going to talk about Football 101. So any mothers out there, or young kids, even daddies, if you want to learn a little bit about the basics of football, then you need to tune into this show. I want to start with what you have to have in order to play this game: equipment. So the first thing that you would think of would be you got to have a football in order to play this game. Now these footballs cost anywhere probably from $55 to $75. And a high school football is a little bit different than an NFL football or a college football. And everything that we're going to talk about today will be about high school football. There's a lot of difference between NCAA football and high school football and NFL football. Now, as we get through each part of this equipment, I want to thank Matthews Team Sports because they allowed me to come by and pick this stuff up and show it to you today. We're going to start at the bottom and we'll work our way up. Cleats. Everybody's got to have them. And they're about $65 for a pair of cleats. And there's different low cuts, high cuts, different types of tips on the ends of them. But every football player is going to use cleats at some time during their career, even from the little guys up. Knee pads. Knee pads, let me pull these things out. If I can get the package open. Well, knee pads. All right? They're probably about $5 a pair for knee pads. This part right here is a girdle combination in which you have a tail pad, your hip pads on the sides, and also your thigh pads, also a part of this equipment. All right? Now, these things here cost about $40. And they're different from the way they used to be years ago because we used to have separate individual pads that we used to put in. A belt that goes around and holds your pants up is about $2. And then a wristband a lot of players wear, especially the quarterbacks. They may have their playlist on these wristbands. All right, and these probably cost anywhere from $3 up to $12, depends on how many sheets they have in there. Because you see them, they'll flip them up. Quarterback's got a lot of plays to call, they'll flip them up, and there'll be different sheets there. All right, we're going to move on up the body here. Shoulder pads. Shoulder pads about $125 up to about $200 for a high school player. These are going to protect, you got to have these, going to protect, if you're a quarterback, they'll be a little bit lighter. If you're an offensive lineman, a little bit bigger, thicker. Linebackers, fullbacks, they have big, have to have a lot of padding, a little bit more protection because they have a lot of contact in there. So these will be a little bit more expensive for a linebacker and a fullback. Headgear. This particular headgear kind of shows you what the inside looks like. All right? This is a headgear that one of our teams used in the county. Now these headgears go from $175, $185 up to $300 for headgear. Very important. You hear a lot about concussions nowadays. You know, this is one key point of protection on concussions. But I want to tell you something. The most important thing is the mouthpiece. When I coached in East Tennessee, we had a team dentist, and he would take all of our skill players, and he would fit them with a mouthpiece. And any player that we had that had concussion problems, I'd always send them to a dentist to get fitted. If you notice about boxers, they get hit in the head all the time, but they have a fitted mouthpiece and they keep their jaws locked, and then that keeps them from getting concussions all the time. Unless they get knocked out, then you know it's inevitable. This costs about $1. Game jersey. They've gone up. They're about $85 for a game jersey. Game pant. Game pant, about $65. You still have to have practice pants and practice jerseys. There's hand pads, forearm pads. So you can see it costs an awful lot of money just to put equipment on your son for football. But you got to have these things in order to play the game. Now, as we move from slide to slide, the most important part of this equipment, everything I showed you, I think is the mouthpiece. I think second is the headgear, and then your shoulder pads. Make sure your son is fitted properly with a mouthpiece. Don't let him come and cut the ends off. Make sure it fits all of his teeth. Make sure it's fitted to his teeth properly. That'll save him from getting some concussions. All right, the field. Here's something you can always trick probably 5 out of 10 football people that think they know everything about football. How big is the field? Well, a high school field, college field, and an NFL field, they're all the same size as far as the length and the width of it. The field is 120 yards long. Now, (120 yards) is going to include the end zone, which is 10 yards or 30 feet. Now, as you think about a football field, most people think that a football field is 50 yards wide. If your husband or your son or your daughter, anybody tells you a football field is 50 yards wide, they're incorrect. A football field is 160 feet, which means it's 53 yards and 12 inches. 53 yards and 12 inches. In high school, the football field is divided into equal thirds. Equal thirds. That's where the hash marks would be in the field. Again, the hash marks is coming down these sides. These are going to be equal thirds right here. Those are measured out at 53 feet and 4 inches. So this middle section is 53 feet and 4 inches. And then the outside third is 53 feet and 4 inches. A total of 160 feet. Not 50 yards, but 53 yards and 12 inches. So if you want to win a free dinner from your husband, ask him how wide a football field is. He says 50 yards. You tell him it's 160 feet, which is 53 yards and 12 inches. All right. At each of the football fields, you have to have a 3-yard line. 3-yard line is where they set it up for your extra point. If you score a touchdown, the ball comes to the 3-yard line. Your extra point team comes out to kick a field goal or an extra point, or they go for a 2-point try. We'll talk a lot more about that when we get to the offensive side of the ball. On the outside of the field is a restraining line that has to be 2 yards off the sidelines. That's to keep the media back, spectators back, people that are not a part of the game itself on the outside of the field. Now, in this area, which is called the coach's box, in a coach's box it's going to go from the 25-yard line to the other 25-yard line. Again, it's going to be about 2 yards deep, and only the coaches can be in that box. And in high school, only 3 coaches at a time can be in that box. Behind the coach's box is the players' area. And they have to stand in that area. If they start crowding into the coach's box, the official, even if you have too many coaches, he'll come out and he'll push them back. He'll wave them to go back. Sometimes they get a flag. They'll get a warning at first. If they do it again, the official will throw a penalty, and that's a 5-yard penalty. If those players are pushing up into the coach's box or there's too many coaches in the coach's box. Now, at high school level, the kickoff point is at the 40-yard line. So on most fields, you'll see an X out on the field at the 40-yard line, usually right in the center of the field. And in the center of the field is where a lot of teams choose to kick off at. They don't have to. They can move the ball to either hash. As long as they stay inside the hashes on kickoff, they can move the ball at any point and kick across the field or down the outside thirds of the field. All right. Goalposts. Goalposts are 23.4 inches wide. They're 10 feet from the ground. So the top of the goalpost. Now they do this in the NFL a bunch. High school kids would get a penalty if they did this. But after they score a touchdown, they like to go and dunk a football over the goalpost. Well, that goalpost top is 10 feet. And a few weeks ago, I think somebody kicked a 63-yard field goal again, hit the top of the goalpost, and went through the goalpost, and it tied the NFL record again. So as long as it hits the goalpost and goes between the 2 uprights, it's going to be good. Now the uprights have to be a minimum of 10-foot extensions from the parallel bar, which means the total top is 20 feet from the ground. That's the minimum. Most high school teams like at least a 20-foot extension, so they'd be 30 foot from the ground. NFLs, they go up to 40 foot high. So if you go over the Titans game, you're going to see their uprights extended. Their uprights are more narrow. Their hash marks are more narrow. They're in. What that does is it gives the offense a bigger advantage if the ball's in closer to the middle of the field, because it allows them to use both sides of the field offensively. Makes it tougher on the defense. Where in high school, you have a sideline to protect you if the ball is on one hash versus the other hash or in the middle of the field. So if you're an offensive coach, for the most part, you like the ball in the middle of the field. Unless you got certain plays called in which you're doing sprint passes and those type of things, which we'll talk about at another time. As we move from the field, we're going to get into the other part of the game in which you have to have in order to have a game is the officials. And they play a major part in our football game. Now the big thing going on right now is the NFL has substitute officials. And if you listen to any sports talk radio, television shows, they're complaining about the officials. And they do impact the game. You try to play the game in which you tell your kids to play hard. They got to play for full at high school, 48 minutes, 12-minute quarters. You know, you're going to have bad calls. You're going to have good calls through the course of the game. You cannot let that affect you on how you play the next play. You can't let a bad play affect you. You can't let a good play affect you. You have to balance up and always play one play at a time. That's what I always taught my players. Play one play at a time, whether something good happened or something bad happened, official makes a bad call or he makes a great call. So we're going to talk about how they're spaced on the field. Now, high school does not have as many officials as you'll see in the NFL or the NCAA. The main official is the referee. He's going to be behind the offense. He'll usually stand, if it's a right-handed quarterback, to his right side if the ball's in the middle of the field. If not, he would stand a little bit to the wide side of the field. The next guy, head linesman. The head linesman is going to be on the side of the official chains. Now in high school, the chain gang is usually located on the visitor sideline so that the home team can have a good sight at where the down and distance is. So the head lineman, he's at where the chains are. All right, we'll talk a little bit what he does next. The lineman helps the head lineman. They line up at the LOS. The LOS is the line of scrimmage. That's where they line up on opposite sides of the field. They make sure every player is in front of them. So no player can be outside of the linesman or the head linesman. The next guy is the umpire. He stands on the defensive side in high school, about 5 yards deep, right between the defensive linebackers. And then the fifth guy at a high school level is this back judge. He's going to stand to the wide side of the field, or in the middle of the field, or to the wide receivers. That's just their position on the field. Now the guy that we don't see in this picture in high school is the electric clock operator. And he's the guy that's on the sidelines, and he'll have the timer in his hand, and he'll officially start and stop the clock as the game's moving forward. And he goes up and down the side with the ball. And he's your official timer. Now he didn't put scores up or anything like that or down a distance. He's just running the clock. He's the guy that runs the clock. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about what each one does. The referee, he's the guy in the white hat. He's the guy, again, who stands behind the offense, behind the deepest guy in the formation. He's going to watch to make sure that there's only 11 people on the offensive side. After he finds out there's only 11, he checks substitutions, that they're done properly. He checks that the quarterback doesn't get hit illegally, or that the quarterback doesn't throw an intentional grounding of the ball. And that's something a little bit different in high school versus the college ranks or the NFL ranks. We'll talk about that later. But he watches for illegal procedures that could take place. He determines whether or not the change to do a measurement has to come out on the field. He's the guy with a white hat who talks to the coaches to tell them what the penalty is. I'll back up now, he also, before the game, he'll meet with the coaches, the referee, the guy in the white hat, and ask them a couple of questions. He'll say, are your players legally equipped? In other words, do you have all the proper equipment that the rules of the game say you have to have on your players? And the coaches will give the information always, yes, they're legally equipped. So that in the course of the game, if an official, if he finds out that one is not, then it's going to be a penalty. And that kid has to go off the field and get the proper equipment on before he can come back on. All right. During the course of the game, he also takes charge of the game about 30 minutes prior to kickoff. He takes over the game. So if a game is going to be called because of weather or postponed, it's the guy in the white hat that makes that decision. Anything that takes place in the course of the game, all the information, another official brings it to the referee, they talk it out, the referee would then, he will stand facing the home crowd and he will give the indication of what the penalty is. Then the ball will be moved either, if it's an offensive penalty, it will be moved back. If it's a defensive penalty, it will move forward down the field. All right, now, next official, the umpire. He was the guy, this guy here, it's 5 yards usually off the line of scrimmage. Now, in the NFL, going back to how different it is, they've moved this guy to the opposite side of the referee, so he doesn't get in the way of all those big people in there and get ran over. All right, he will set the ball. He sets the ball. In the NFL, he gets out of the way. High school, he stays right in this area. He also is helping the referee, counting to make sure there's 11 guys on the field. He's going to check for holding, which is one of his biggest calls that he makes. Holding. An offensive lineman takes his hands and he grabs a defensive lineman illegally and will not let go. He'll get a holding call put on him. The umpire is the one who throws the flag on that penalty. The other things that he would call would be if a lineman is downfield too soon. That would be in the case of a pass play. Because if the quarterback is back and he's throwing the ball and the ball goes past the line of scrimmage, then those linemen have to be on their side of the ball, the LOS, prior to the ball being thrown before they could go downfield. If they're not, then it would be lineman downfield. Now, here's the difference. If the ball is thrown behind the line of scrimmage in high school, in other words, the receiver or the running back, they're running a screen. He catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Then, in high school, the offensive lineman can be 20 yards down the field, and it's not illegal. They can go and proceed and go to the blocks of the men they're supposed to block on down the field. NFL, again, you can't do that. All right, you have to be at the line of scrimmage at any point when before the ball is passed in the NFL. Once the ball is released, then you can move forward and go downfield to make your blocks. He records all the timeouts. Actually, they all do, but he's the guy in charge of it. Records the scores. Also records who wins the opening toss, heads or tails. And on rainy days, he tries to keep that ball clean because he'll spot the ball. He'll try to keep it dry as much as he can. Now, we'll back up to the coin toss since this guy's in charge of recording it. At the very beginning of the game, the officials will meet with the captains of the teams out on the 50-yard line. The visiting team will get to call the coin toss. The referee will flip the coin and let it hit on the ground. You get the call prior to the flip. The visiting team makes their call. If they win the toss, then they have the choice of taking the ball or deferring to the second half. Or they could also go on defense first. Very few teams ever do that because that means that you would be kicking off both halves. But in certain situations, in really bad weather, winds blowing, a lot of rain, you think there's going to be a lot of turnovers, you may choose to do that. You may choose to go on defense first, to kick both halves because you're afraid of the turnovers. All right, but that's something that does come up. All right, we have to keep on moving here. Heads lineman. Heads lineman, he's on the side of the chains where they mark the ball. You get 4 downs to go 10 yards. We'll talk more about this later. This guy's going to be on that side. He's going to mark the chains. He'll take a little clip and he'll put it on the chains on the line in between the chains. The football field is lined off every 5 yards. He'll pick one of those 5 yards and he'll mark it right at the middle of that line so that if they have to take the chains on the field to do a measurement, he'll take that mark, he'll put it in the middle of that line. The other two will stretch the chains to see if the offensive team got a first down or not. He'll also look for illegal shifts, illegal motion. He also helps counts the number of players and also if there's linemen downfield. Now in high school, the head lineman and the lineman, they'll help the back judge also with pass interference calls. If it's on their side, as they move, the ball moves down the field, if they see a pass interference call, they'll also help make that call. The linesman lines up opposite of the head linesman. He has the same responsibilities. He also will be calling false starts on the offense and encroachment on the offense. Now, in high school, not in college or the NFL, the line of scrimmage is a horizontal plane that if a defensive player, any part of his body crosses that plane prior to the ball being snapped, that's encroachment, offsides. That is a penalty. They can't jump across the line and then move back. Not in high school. College, NFL, you can do that, but you cannot do it in high school. So it's called encroachment or offsides. That penalty is going to be called by the linesman and the head lineman on their side of the field. That penalty happens a lot in high school football. They don't have to make contact. They just have to break the plane of the line of scrimmage. It'll be a penalty. Again, he'll look for interference calls on his side to help the back judge out. Substitutions on and off the field also come into play. Back judge. Back judge is the guy that keeps up with the defensive count. He makes sure there's 11 guys on his side. He also is the 25-second clock guy for the plays in high school. So he'll have an extra watch in which he'll click for 25 seconds because you got 25 seconds to get a play off. When he gets down to 20 seconds, he'll start a count with his hand so that the quarterback can see him. In other words, he has to stand where the quarterback can see him. And if he counts down 5 times, then he'll pull his flag after the 5th one because the offense did not get the play off in time. And that's a delay of game. And that's the back judge who makes that call at the high school level. Now, NFL and college, they got 25-second clocks or 40-second clocks. They've gone to something different that helps them in that part. But it's the back judge who's going to make that call. He's also the guy that's going to also be in charge, probably most of the time, of all the interceptions that do take place in the course of the game and pass interference. And he also helps in field goals, extra points, calling it whether it's good or not. Well, time has gone by really fast. This has been our first lesson of Football 101. We plan to do a couple more of these. So I can't tell you exactly how many shows we're going to have. It depends on how fast I guess, talk as we get through these shows. But I hope you enjoyed the first part, and stay tuned for future shows on the Williamson County Sports Connection. I'm Jack Daniels, your host. Thank you.